Mutusahtuasagan Elaponke silamahayigon tanahkehen yanagin choge cholumiga umma atasla chahajkaga Elaponke encholi gosh en hoches figos wan totamta pontanahkige emayam gaale emashachi gon yanagin choge hoches fig atlachi chalalete. How y'all doing, everybody? So last night we did meet to practice Elaponke, and we wrote these notes, but because writing and reading in Elaponke are difficult, just as a little help, I'm going to go ahead and read the notes that we have so far, English and Elaponke. Mawa atlachi chongwa. So then let's get started. We did start by looking at some of the basic grammar differences between Elaponke and English. Starting off with the very basics, in English, Sam eats oranges, a person does a thing, a doer does something to an object. But in Elaponke, you flip the last two. A person to an object does something. Subject, object, verb. Sam oranges eats, as opposed to Sam eats oranges. Jam got yelahon impon. Sam oranges eats. Oranges Sam got yelahon impon. Right. Another slight difference is that in English, people do things in places. Right? Sam eats oranges in the orange grove. Sam eats oranges in the garden. But in Elaponke, a person place in something does. Right? English, a person does something in a place. In Elaponke, generally, because the word order is also quite flexible, a person place in something does. So as opposed to Sam eats oranges in the garden in English, in Elaponke, Jam got wachaba yogan yalahon imponwa. Jam got wachaba yogan yalahon imponwa. Or yalahe kamoshkon imponwa. So we talked about that briefly. I did make this sort of rather complicated verb table where we looked at some of the basic verbs and how to put them in the simple present tense positive and the simple present tense negative. What does that mean? You have some words. How do you say I, you, he, she does it? I, you, he, she do not or does not do it? Well, we picked a couple basic verbs, right? Impik, to eat. Tagalkik, to work. Chagulik, to sit or to live somewhere. Omik, to do or to be or to make. Very flexible word. Omik, omige. Ishkik, to drink. Aglik, to think or to want, to crave, sort of. Hijik, to see. Asiyik, to go. And untik, to come. There are many verbs in Elaponke. That's one of the distinguishing features of the Elaponke language and its cousins in the Muskogean language families, that it's very verb heavy. A lot of action words, right? The action is the main part of Elaponke language, as opposed to English, where we have lots of words for things that aren't attached to actions, right? Why do we call, a pen a pen? Why do we call food food? In English it doesn't make any sense, but in Elaponke, ischoli, the thing that you write with is a pen, right? Impige, the thing that you eat is food, right? So the verb is very important in Elaponke. Mawa. Anyway, looking at these verbs, whenever you open your Elaponke dictionary and you look up, let's say, to work, you will probably see it in this form, tagalkik, to work. That's because the tagalk part of tagalkik, what's in blue, is the main root of the verb, the part that actually means work. And the ik part means like to do it. Tagalkik, to work, it's not actually conjugated for anyone. It doesn't actually say anyone's working or will work or has worked. It's sort of in the container, as it were. It's still in the wrapper, right? Tagalkik. This word tagalkik, if it has ik at the end, it's still in the wrapper. It hasn't been used yet. So whenever you're conjugating a verb, you're going to take off the ik part, right? Going to throw it away. And you're going to add on one of these suffixes. A suffix is another word for like a half word, right? We love to use half words in Elaponke, right? Chi, hinch, alega, hinch, loja, right? Chi, hinch, alega, hinch, oja. Each part means something. And each of those half words or fraction of a word that we talked about just now, those parts of words, those are called prefixes if they're in the front of a word, and suffixes at the end if it's at the end of a word. So these here are suffixes. So if I take, for example, the word impik, to eat, or impuk, as Paul Buster says, if you take impik and you take off the ik, you can add on one of these half words to change who it is that's eating. Impik is to eat. I take off the ik. Imp means eat. Omelet means I do it, or omene, as some friends in Tagoshasli say it. So imp plus omelet equals impomle, I eat. Imp plus omichka means impomichka, you eat it, right? Impomele, I eat. Impomichka, you eat. Imp plus or imp plus ame with an e at the end. Impam, he eats or she eats. Impame, he eats or she eats. Okay? And that's how it is conjugating verbs in the simple present tense. Imp plus amiga means impamiga, we eat it, impamiga. Imp plus omachka, impamachka, y'all eat. And that's all there is to it, conjugating in the present tense in Elaponke. Simple present tense, positive present tense, right? And so if that's the positive, I do eat, you do eat, he, she does eat, I'll repeat it again in rapid succession just so that learners have an idea and have an impression of how this works. Impamle, I eat. Impamichka, you eat. Impam, he eats, she eats. Impame, he eats, she eats. Impamiga, we eat. Impamachka, y'all eat. And then again, impam for they eat. And that's for the present, positive tense, right? For the negative, I do eat is one side, I don't eat is the other. And so if we have imp meaning to eat, and etagam means I don't do it, impatagam, I don't eat it, I don't eat that. Impichkatigam, you don't eat that. Impatigam, he doesn't eat that, she doesn't eat that. Take note, though, that some of these, or actually all of these suffixes, have a little, the part that says ga, that's in parentheses. Why? Because just as often as you might hear impatagam, you might hear imptam, I don't eat, right? So you can say it the long form with the go, or you can say it the short form without it. I'm going to use the long form because the person I primarily speak to, Carol Cypress, does the long form. Mawat. Impatagam, I don't eat it. Impichkatigam, you don't eat it. Impatigam, he doesn't eat it, she doesn't eat it. Impigatigam, we don't eat it. Impachkatigam, y'all don't eat it. And then again, impatigam, he doesn't, they don't eat it, is for the plural third person as well. So with these suffixes, someone does do the verb. With these suffixes, someone does not do the verb. Right? That's all it is for the verb. Now for the other stuff we talked about, if we're talking about eating, because that was the theme yesterday, folks was hungry, it looks like. Michaela asked, what if you want to say and, right? In the dictionary, and is translated as mamin, or main, or mahin, or mahmihin, or any number of variations. But you don't put that everywhere that you would say and in English. Let me just, sorry about that. Let me just take a look at the answer. The dictionary says and equals mammon, but I know some speakers like Carol Marie who say putting mammon wherever you'd put and is grating to the ears. Just say the list of things, Carol once told me. No and is necessary. Other speakers might advise putting mammon at the only before the last item in a list. Angie advised using mammon in describing, for example, the dish spam and tomatoes. The example that Michaela gave was like, oh, what if I want to say I eat spam and tomatoes? Well, depending on what you mean by that, if you mean like you're eating spam on one side, tomatoes on the other, you would just list them like that, putting un at the end to show that they're the object of the verb. So, spam gon tomaton impomle, if you're talking about, spam on one part and tomatoes on the other. If you're talking about the mixed dish unique to Seminole and Miccosukee people, spam and tomatoes, you would call that spam mein tomate som peletke. Spam mein tomate som peletke. And what that all says is spam mein and tomate tomato som peletke, that the tomato is poured on top of it. Spam and tomato is poured on top of it. That's what you call spam and tomatoes. And so to say I'm eating spam and tomatoes in the way that Michaela wanted, you would say spam mein tomate som pelet kon impomele. Spam mein tomate som pelet kon impomele. Eating spam and tomatoes, the mixed dish that Bourgie makes. It's really, really yummy. If there's one thing Elaponke does not lack, it is syllables. Okay. Talking through the class, there were a few phrases that were of interest pointed out here and there. When Footy said that, she heard her mom say stuff like Jemahip, which means that's your problem. Super cool phrase. I have no idea how to split that one up, how to break that one apart. When I visit some of the fluent speakers that I visit and I get an answer, I'll let y'all know. Another one, dalwiksha, which Michaela said meant like throw it away. That's another one I'd have to ask about, because to me, dalwiksha sounds like dance. Dalwik is to dance, and sha is like, it adds emphasis, do it. Some random adjectives that came up, simple ones. Hile is how you say good. Hile. Hampe means bad. Hampe. Jaihe means tall. Jaihe. And kichigne means short. Kichigne. Since we're starting to make basic sentences here, Chelsea thought of the bright idea to organize the words that we learn according to themes so that we could make sentences, as a group and stack sentences more comfortably. So since we was talking about eating and spam and tomatoes and all that, the theme became food. So we picked about, 5 to 7, 5 to 8 words for each category of word, and we're going to make sentences using these on our own, and then we're going to stack sentences together when we meet next meetup. So, food. MBE. Word bank. Here's a couple of nouns. A noun is a thing. So some nouns related to food. Ashpe, which means corn. Ashpe. Aluje, which means rice. Aluje. Paleste, which means bread. Also, some people say paliste. Virginia Tommy says paliste. Tateahe, which means chicken. Tateahe. Agne, which means meat of any animal, even humans, our body. I would say my body, achagne, right? My meat. Let's please be adults. You can add agne to any animal or living thing, and it refers to that being's meat. So iche is deer, ichagne is deer meat. Wage means cow, wagagne means beef, right? Cow flesh. Bacon, dojine. Dojine is bacon. And hishkepige is greens or vegetables. Hishkepige. Someone else brought up they've heard chokfimimpige. Chokfimimpige, rabbit food. But that refers to like carrots and root vegetables, whereas hishkepige is like leafy greens. So those are some of the nouns. Some of the adjectives. Adjective is a word to describe something, good, bad, tall, short, like the adjectives up here, right? The ones we brought up were kamoshke, which means sweet, kamoshke. Hainoje, which is hot, but some of us have heard of spicy. Home, which means spicy. But I do remember using this with Houston, and they said to them it meant bitter. So there's quite a lot of diversity of usage among some of these words, depending on who you're talking to. Age means sour. Age. Footy remembers their dad taking off their shoes and saying that that their feet was smelling aji, which is hilarious to me. So that tells me aje means sour or like funky. Salty is okchahnishka moshke. Okchahnishka moshke. Okchahne is sweet. I'm sorry. Okchahne means salt. Ishka moshke. Kamoshke means sweet. So in Elaponke, things aren't salty. They're just salt sweet. Super cool. Bland or watered down is dakshe. Dakshe is bland. Fresh or like what's the word? Fresh or like still green of a fruit or vegetable is dalakche. Dalakche. Rotten is lehahke. Lehahke. Cooked is nuhe. Nuhe. And of course, to cook is nuhachik. We'll talk about that in a second. To make, be cooked. Yeah, cooked is nuhe and raw is nuhokshe. Nuhokshe. And now we look at the verbs. We're almost done. Verbs, the action words, the heart and soul of the Miccosukee language. Some of the verbs we brought up were wachkik, to slice or to dice. Nuhajik, which means to cook. Nuhajik is to cook. Obviously related to nuhe, which means cooked. We're drawing connections between words. Tabulik is to stir. Tabulik, to stir. Shogamulijik is to fry. Shogamulijik is to fry. But I also heard Virginia Tomic say it shogamulijik without that sort of hard l. Shogamulijik. Carol says shogamulijik. Shogamulijik, to fry. Kabalik, to bite. Kabalik is to bite. Iptachik is to freeze. Iptachik is to freeze. And that makes sense because what do you call ipte? Ipte, anat kapungon, nagoto mo. Ipte is ice. Ipte is ice. So ipte is ice. Iptachik is to freeze, to make it be ice. Sounds logical to me. Hoshik is to boil. Hoshik, to boil. like to make something be boiled, like hulit hat wantachi omigon nagnut ogon holome. To make the pasta, the man is boiling the water. So holik is to make something be boiling. Donabachik is to prepare. Donabachik is to prepare. Could have also said holit hat wantachi donabachi gon nagnut ogon holome. And then hochik is to grind something down. Hochik is to pound it or to grind it down to make it into a meal, a powder, like cornmeal, you know. Histe omigon aspe hochiguatamis. In order to make histe, which is like cornmeal, you gotta hochik, you have to pound or grind the corn. And so with this sort of common set of nouns, adjectives, and verbs, the homework that we decided to do was make 4 food-related sentences. They can be as short as or as long as you want. If you want to describe, how you make a dish, go for it. If you just want to conjugate a couple of verbs in the present tense using these suffixes, that's also okay too. Just be ready to share them. Okay? Ama haglitz kaga sanabisa.